What's going on, you guys? Keith Carnes here, and welcome to my first real official video of 2016. I want to thank everybody, before I start this video, start the topic, for the 809 at the time of this recording subscribers. That is fucking crazy to me, that there are now over 800 of you guys. I remember thanking you guys for 600. I remember being excited when I had 60 subscribers, and just to think that I'm over 800 is just insane. So I just want to thank you guys all really quick here. I would do something more if I had the ability and the video editing skills to do something better, but I just don't. I'm sorry. But yeah, so today we're looking. So thank you guys very much. It's all because of you that I'm still here. Because if you guys weren't supporting me, weren't subscribing to me, I would probably not be bothering making videos anymore, because there's really no one to make them for. So thank you very much. But today I wanted to do something kind of different, but something I've done before. And I'm actually going to talk about a video I made a while back, and I named it was part of my conspiracy theory series. And I was talking about the Columbine conspiracy, and I've gotten some awesome comments and feedback from you guys. Thank you so much. I love engaging into these conversations with you guys. Some of you guys actually bring stuff to my attention that I never knew existed and didn't even know about, and some of you actually make me think about my own perspective on these things. Now, of course, the Columbine conspiracy is just like any other conspiracy. It's got wacky parts, but it's got some senseful parts, and it's also got some kind of in-between kind of stuff. My main one was talking about there being multiple shooters on April 20th, 1999 in the Columbine massacre at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. It is widely accepted that it was Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold of the school that carried out the killings, and that's pretty much it. In a sense, there was really no real motive why they did this. A lot of people think they were psychotic, blah, blah, blah. I could go into that all day, but we're not talking about why they did it. We're talking about if there was more people involved in the actual massacre and the actual mission, so to speak. So I went ahead and I made this talking about, you know, there being, supposedly being other people. There was this main kid that looked somewhat similar to Dylan, but not 100%. You could definitely pick them out, you know, side by side. You could definitely know who was who if you stood them side by side and asked which one's Dylan, which one's the other kid. You'd be like, well, that's easy. But there's actually some witness accounts in the actual reports from Columbine, the official reports of Columbine, when witnesses were questioned about who they saw shooting, and there was actually a third kid that was pointed out by numerous different witnesses. Now, this leads people to believe that there was actually a conspiracy, a false flag, if you will, and that it either A, didn't really happen, even though there was dead bodies outside of the school on live news, or they only wanted to nail Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold and for some reason let this kid go. Now, this guy who's been accused by many conspiracy theories, you know, he has never come forward to clear his name really with conspiracy theorists, which he probably doesn't feel that he has to, and honestly, I don't blame the guy. But me personally, if people were like, oh, I think he had something to do with it, I would take to YouTube like I'm right now and just explain to them, look, I didn't have anything to do with Columbine. But he's not being looked at seriously by any real official, so he has nothing to worry about. And I personally don't believe that anybody else was involved. I think this was strictly Eric and Dylan. I think this was their plan. This was their massacre. This was their mission, if you will, and it was carried out by the two boys. I don't think it had anything to do with anybody else. I don't think it was a larger picture. I don't think anybody else really had anything to do with it. I think it was just these two. Some people admitted that Eric and Dylan had boasted about doing something bad at the school, but nobody took them seriously. I mean, they were like social outcasts. They were these, you know, kids that, you know, were kind of looked at as being weird, and they weren't the most popular kids. Eric was somewhat popular in some areas. I mean, both of them had friends, so they weren't completely outcasts. I mean, there was probably kids there that had it worse than Eric and Dylan, but I don't know. So, don't want to drag on too long. Let's get into the actual thing. Sorry it's taking so long. I just wanted to kind of cover ground before I got in this so you know where we are. So, I've been talking to some of you guys on here, and one person that I actually talked to was Snuff Daddy. He just, as of this recording, it's a little shout out to Snuff Daddy here on YouTube. Just a day ago, as of this recording, he said there was a third guy people said was with Eric and Dylan, whose name was redacted from all files, which is true. I've read the files myself. I responded and I said, I personally think it was a mistake by witnesses. With all that going on, it's not hard to imagine people accidentally giving incorrect information. And the reason I said that is because put yourself in that position. You're at school, high school, you're with all your friends, the day is still, you guys are, getting ready for lunch. You got all, your tests on your mind. Graduation's literally right around the corner. And, there's a lot on your mind, and then all of a sudden you hear gunshots. People are dying all around you. You realize that this is a real attack, that you could very well be murdered. I mean, think about that. There's people gunning for you, even though you didn't do anything to deserve it, and you're just looking around in the chaos. And a big thing I believe is that the reason I think that this redacted person in the files was named as a third shooter, and I think the reason why the other people were supposedly there, there was something like upwards of 8 different shooters identified by witnesses, is because I think that some kids that probably knew Eric and Dylan approached them and talked to them while they were killing people and said, there's even one incident in the library when the massacre was underway, where a friend of Dylan's came up and said, what are you doing? And Dylan's like, oh, just killing people. That's a very famous thing that happened. So it's not too crazy to think that other kids that were familiar with Eric and Dylan walked up to them and like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? And they maybe just said, we're killing people, get the fuck out of here. And people saw them having this brief, interaction with one another, and they obviously probably thought, oh my god, there's a third shooter, oh, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and there's just all these different people. Or maybe there was people that weren't being targeted by Eric and Dylan that we don't really know about, and they were just able to kind of walk away from Eric and Dylan. People are like, oh my god, another shooter. I mean, it would kind of make me suspicious, right? I mean, come on, if you were in that situation. So he replies with, I don't know, bro. I can understand, at the Aurora, they said that there was more than one shooter. I can understand confusion there because they were saying it seemed like bullets came from 2 directions. Or the guy with the cell who opened the door. But at Columbine, they were giving a name, and it was more like 5 people who were saying it. For example, let's say that the name was Steve, and they were saying, I know Steve, I saw Steve with Dylan. I say Eric and Steve, and I saw Eric and Steve in the stairwell. Steve had a gun. I'm not sure if it was the TCM, but he was down with them. Also in the pics, I see of Dylan and Eric in the library. There's blood on the floor, on the books behind Eric's head, and some of the blood his pant legs consistent with having come from Dylan's head, which indicates they were already in those positions when they got shot. I'm not saying the case closed, blah blah blah. So he makes some kind of interesting points, but I can honestly just debunk those as soon as they're said, with all due respect to Snuff Daddy. Like I already covered, I saw, that's a good thing. Instead of saying redacted, we'll just name this person Steve. I saw Steve with Dylan. I saw Steve with Eric in the stairwell. I saw Steve with a gun. When you're in that kind of hysteria, let's use 9/11 for an example, which he kind of did there too. Let's use 9/11 as an example ourselves, and look at 9/11 as a thing. Now, there was a lot of people that were right near the towers when the towers were hit, and they were in a blaze of humanity, and just crazy. People are jumping to their desks, slamming into the concrete all around you. And you hear, if you hear some of the videos here on YouTube, if you're not squeamish, check it out. There are videos that you can hear people hitting the ground and hitting the awnings and stuff from the top of the buildings, and it sounds like an explosion. And later, witnesses were saying, yeah, I heard explosions coming from the building, and people were like, oh my god, conspiracy, the fucking building was bombed, it was a controlled demolition. You have to look at everything. You can't just automatically assume, yep, it was conspiracy. No, because it was explained that the reason for the explosions was a combination of hearing people slam into the floor, slam into the ground and other things, because you don't hear that every day, thank God. And secondly, it was the sound of some of the floors pancaking. Imagine the sound and the force of that. That's crazy. So, kind of like 9/11, where it was a mistake, I believe it was the same thing here with Columbine. People saw this kid maybe talking to Dylan. Maybe he was familiar with Dylan. Maybe they were friends. They redacted his name for a reason. And it was probably to protect his identity, because he was probably spared, and people, they didn't want victims' families and other people going after this kid saying, I think he was involved, when the kid was probably just, the kid, if anything, was probably just guilty by association with these two kids. And he probably was talking to them saying, God, you know, what are you guys doing, this and that. And it's possible, but do I think that there was more shooters on that day? Absolutely not. There's no proof, there's no evidence that shows that anybody else was there shooting. Chloe Dawson, 2 weeks ago, wrote, I don't think anyone could have been talking to them in the library. There's a full audio of the entire spree in there. That could be a fair, thing to say, except for the fact that we don't have the entire audio recording of the killing spree in the library, so that kind of falls flat there, unfortunately. Let's see. Say there's just different people, some saying that it was definitely a false flag. Okay, here's another one by Beat Truth 91. He writes, there's a video of a SWAT on the roof with a guy that looks with what looks like a clipboard, but the cops said they were not on the roof, and like they said and explained in the picture of someone on the roof as being a repairman. Definitely not convinced there was 5 shooters, but there are many strange aspects to the whole thing. I responded with, I agree, many weird things happened on that day. Now, the cops denying that they were on the roof, let's face it, they can't account for every single one of their men. I mean, they had that place flooded with SWAT team members. And the repairman on the roof, I don't know why they wouldn't go up there and check that guy out. They don't know who was involved in the shooting at the time. They don't know if it was students or if it was an outside attack. They didn't know what was going on. So the repairman being on the roof, which turned out to be lucky for him because they never went to the roof, he could have very well have been a shooter. He could have been using a sniper. He could have been a sharpshooter, but he fortunately wasn't. He was just a poor repairman that was stuck on the roof during this whole thing. You know, he actually barricaded the door. He locked the door, I believe, or something like that. And luckily for him, Eric and Dylan never attempted to go on the roof, which would have been stupid on their part anyway. So, lucky for him, Eric and Dylan weren't that fucking stupid. I just think that that was a repairman, and the SWAT team being spotted on the roof is probably just a mistake by the cops saying that they never went to the roof. It was probably just a mistake on their end. It's nothing really to look into. And the final one I'll cover is Christina Thorne a month ago wrote, comparing the surveillance camera still of Dylan and the death photo. The death photo reveals the same black clothes, but the still picture of his pants look tighter and baggier. The gun doesn't look the same. This is my input. I responded with, his pants appeared baggier in the video because he's standing. He's laid out after his suicide, thus making the pants tighten. The gun he is holding is clearly the same shotgun in his photo. So, it's clearly the same gun. I didn't mean to write shotgun. It's clearly the same gun in his death photo. So what this woman is talking about, this user is talking about, is she's talking about the actual suicide pics of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, which is readily available on the internet. Now, as I said, you know, if you're not squeamish, check it out. It's very interesting if you're in this case, but it's very, very graphic. And the whole baggier thing isn't really, I don't really think that really holds any merit, because when Eric and Dylan died, you know, Dylan was kind of still sat in a sitting position, but he was kind of to the side with his dill all over the books behind him. And what I mean by dill is, I'm sorry to say this, to be a little blunt, but his brains and his blood all over the books behind him, and he was kind of sitting like this. Whereas Dylan was completely laid out flat. But remember that the cops did confirm that they did move the bodies before the pictures was taken, so that wasn't their final resting place from where they actually fell when they shot themselves. We've never got confirmation whether these two were kneeling, whether they were standing at full when they shot themselves. All we know is that they committed suicide relatively around the same exact time as one another. So his pants appearing baggier in the video, absolutely, I'm sure they did, because he was standing. When he's laying, if you lay down, anything would pretty much kind of tighten because you're laying. I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of obvious. As far as his gun, the guns don't look the same. Yeah, they do. The one Eric has is clearly the shotgun he later used to blow the top of his head off, and Dylan is clearly holding the Tech-9 that he later put into his head and was a lot less graphic, just had a lot of blood coming from his ears. So there was definitely things there that happened that make sense. So I'm sorry to Christina Thorne. I'm sorry. I appreciate your input, I really do, but both of those are easily debunked. So why am I making this video? I'm making this video because I think it was necessary. There was a huge conversation going on. I would love it for you to join in. If you haven't, go ahead and check out my videos. Find the Columbine one, conspiracy theory, and go ahead and leave your comments. I love hearing it. This is just my opinion. This is why I don't believe Columbine was an inside job. I think it is what they said happened. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold held an attack on the school, killed a bunch of innocent people for their own reasons, which we'll never really truly fully understand because neither boys were really direct with explaining their reason for doing what they did. They just called it their judgment day. And that's really it. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but I really enjoy talking about this topic. I will definitely make more Columbine videos if you guys are interested in my opinions on it, or you guys have an idea. You're more than welcome leaving in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. This is the Keith Cards. You guys take it easy. And once again, thank you guys so much for over 800 subscribers. It's insane. It's crazy, man. So thank you guys so much. Take it easy. I'll see you guys in the next.